近日，香港的一只17岁的博美犬被检测出新型冠状病毒弱阳性反应。那么对此，我们本周一采访了墨尔本大学动物医学院病毒学教授、前澳洲动物医学协会主席 Dr. James Gilkerson，希望能够解决了大家的一些顾虑。那么截止发稿时，我们又收到了来自澳洲动物医学协会的官方邮件，这只博美犬的最后的血清学结果显示为阴性。那么这就意味着目前为止这只狗并未被感染。无论如何，现在让我们来一起听听 Dr. James 是怎么看待此次新型冠状病毒对人和宠物的影响。
Good morning, Dr. James, and thank you very much for agreeing to do the interview with us. And as we all know, and there has been a report about the Pomeranian in Hong Kong who has been detected a weak novel coronavirus positive for 4 consecutive times, and unluckily its owner has been also detected as a novel coronavirus positive. So today we prepared several of questions, and I believe a lot of vets and public health workers and also a lot of pet owners might be very interested. So let's jump into it.
So they've swabbed the dog, but I don't know that they swabbed the environment to see whether they could detect the virus in the environment or anything like that. So I think it's just the fact that the dog's in a contaminated area with a person that's infectious, and so they're shedding some virus. The dog it's sort of like come into contact with the virus, and then the dog's been swabbed, and yes, it's positive. But it's a weak positive. If the virus was replicating in the dog, you'd see higher viral load. It wouldn't be weak positive. It'd be a strong positive, right? And then you'd expect to see clinical signs of disease and respiratory signs in the dog. None of that's happened as far as I'm aware. But in the absence of any information about viral load, the fact that they talk about it being a weak positive suggests that it's a low viral load, right? So that it's just a transitory sort of exposure, if you like.
Okay. Exposure instead of
an active infection.
Yeah.
I think there's a difference between infection and disease, right? So the dog's showing no clinical signs of disease, and you'd think when infectious diseases of any sort, when animals or people are showing signs of disease, coughing and nasal discharge or whatever the clinical signs might be of the disease, that's when they're infectious, and there's much more opportunity for that sort of infection to pass backwards and forwards. Even though this virus seems to have been a wildlife coronavirus that's jumped to people, I don't think there's any other evidence that it's more likely to jump from species to species. It was an unusual event in the first instance, but it seems to have been quite stably transmitting between people. So I don't think it seems to be a virus that seems to be infecting a large number of different animal species. So I don't think people need to worry. Of course, they need to be alert and they need to pay attention to what's being told to them. But I think they need to pay attention to what's being told to them by their public health authority, rather than what they've seen on their social channels. There's no real evidence anywhere around pets being a risk to their owners, and I think these are the sort of things that have been commented on a number of times in the media, but also in social media and what have you just recently. So I think people need to be calm, they need to be rational, and part of the problem with disease outbreaks like COVID-19 is that we don't know all the facts, and so where we don't know all the facts, people fill in the information and they come to the different conclusions. It's something that it's new, and so we're still getting used to how it spreads, and I think people are very sensitive and very aware of all of the implications, and so they sort of potentially come to their own conclusions without thinking these things through based on more knowledge. So I think the PPE in pets thing is a reflection of how people care about their pets. The same people who have PPE for their dogs and are the ones who've got the raincoat for their dog because we're going for a walk and it's wet. They've got the nice warm coat for their dog because they're going for a walk and it's cold. You know, that it's a reflection of how people care about them.
The more the merrier.
Yeah, and I think it just looks a bit weird.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be blamed or anything.
No.
Yeah.
You know, and I think those are the people who, you know, trying to just do their best by their animal. Nothing wrong with that. Depending on where you are and what your circumstances are in your local area, then you should be exercising your dog as normal. If you're worried about coronavirus, I think the people walking their dog are the bigger risk to you rather than it being a risk to your dog, right? So if you want to take precautions and social distancing around other people, that's probably not an unreasonable thing to do. But I don't think you need to worry too much about your dog coming into contact with someone else's dog and any sort of transmission of COVID-19. There's the one report of a weak positive which suggests that the virus went from the pet owner to the pet. And it was present, but whether it's actually replicating and causing any sort of disease in that dog, given the time lag between when it was first detected, the repeated samples, the complete absence of any clinical disease in the dog, I think it's just circumstance that the dog got exposed, but there's no evidence of disease, and certainly there's no evidence of any sort of dog-to-dog, cat-to-cat, and transmission. So I think people need to behave as normal, be responsible pet owners, look after their dogs and cats. If that means walking them, if they've got that opportunity, you know, to walk them outside, that's fine. They need to listen to what the public health authorities are telling them to do, what they can, what they can't do. So if they're able to walk the dogs outside, that's fine. The risk for coronavirus spread will be from person to person, so perhaps you just want to think about who you come into contact with when you're walking the dog. I understand there are cultural reasons why people prefer to have wet markets where animals are slaughtered and they can see that there's fresh meat and that it's all done there in front of them. But I think also from a public health point of view, there are risks associated with that. And so, like I said, the situation in Australia, in Europe, in the US, anti-mortem inspections by veterinarians, all of the animals, when they get slaughtered, are slaughtered at a designated abattoir where you can put in place welfare checks, you can put in place meat inspection, you can make sure that the food safety approach to delivering a nice, safe product that's fit for human consumption at the end. All of those things need to be put in place, and things like wildlife markets won't meet any of those sort of standards. So I think as food safety becomes more of an issue, when you see these sorts of outbreaks happening, then maybe one of the outcomes for this down the track might be that there's some more regulation put in place about what animal species you should or shouldn't eat. And then also, if you should eat them, if it's okay to eat them, then how they're slaughtered in a humane way, and how that there's a food safety approach for how the end product gets to the consumer. I think you've got two different groups of people there. So public health workers, I think they need to look after themselves. In some respect, with public health workers, they're a bit like on the aeroplane when you get the video that says put your mask on before you, when the oxygen mask drops, put your mask on before you help someone else. And I think that's the thing public health workers need to think about. They need to look after themselves so they can look after other people. Right? Yamao, Yango, Wachadao, Jai, why, what, where, when, how.
Nice.